New data show the rate of unaccompanied migrant children crossing the border is declining. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the number of minors in border custody has dropped 88% since late March. At that time, thousands of children were being held in severely overcrowded facilities, well beyond the 3-day legal limit. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is traveling to Texas Friday for an update. He's expected to tour one of Customs and Border Protection's processing facilities in the city of Donna. CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez had an inside look at that facility Thursday, and he joins me now from Donna, Texas. Camilo, thanks so much for talking to us. Tell us what you saw today on your tour of that processing facility. It's remarkable to have that kind of access, but clearly this is something that the Biden administration wants you to see.
Right. Good evening, Elaine. This facility right behind me is the largest holding complex for unaccompanied migrant children and families with minors across the entire U.S.-Mexico border. It is located here in Donna, Texas. We just finished a pen and pad tour of the facility, and the circumstances here and the conditions here at this facility have changed quite dramatically, Elaine, from just 5 weeks ago. In March, just for your understanding, Elaine, this facility was holding more than 4,000 migrants, including more than 3,000 unaccompanied children. Some of the pods designed for only a handful of children were holding dozens of unaccompanied minors. This facility is now holding today about 800 migrants, including 300 unaccompanied children. So the population inside this facility has decreased dramatically. There is no longer any severe overcrowding at this facility. Back in March, there was a playpen, Elaine, for really young children. There were about 27 young, tender-age minors, as the government calls them, at that time. Right now, there are no really young children in that playpen. They left this morning, actually. And so the conditions here have improved considerably because the Department of Health and Human Services, which is responsible for the long-term care of unaccompanied minors, has been building and opening all these emergency facilities like convention centers, work camps, and military sites, and is allowing Border Patrol to transfer unaccompanied children quickly to them in a more expeditious manner. But, despite the fact, Elaine, that overcrowding here has been reduced quite dramatically, it was still striking for me, Elaine, to see very young unaccompanied children. I saw about a 7-year-old boy crying in one of the pods inside the facility. I saw dozens of mothers with really young children, and it just goes to illustrate the humanitarian challenges that the Biden administration is facing here at the U.S.-Mexico border, Elaine.
Enormous challenges, as you've been reporting on, Camilo. Well, despite the dramatic reduction, the number of unaccompanied minors being held in border facilities appears to be rising again. What are the details on that, Camilo?
Sure. So back in late March, there was a record high 5,800 unaccompanied children in Customs and Border Protection custody across the entire U.S.-Mexico border. Many were held in stations that are designed to hold adult men for short periods of time, and there was severe overcrowding in facilities just like this one here in Donna, Texas. However, the population of unaccompanied children in Border Patrol stations has declined quite dramatically. They are now holding less than 800 unaccompanied children, including about 300 in this facility right behind me. The numbers have gone up in the past 2 days, but it's still only a slight increase. Again, the biggest game changer during this situation, Elaine, is that the Department of Health and Human Services has been able to open tens of thousands of emergency beds by repurposing convention centers, work camps, and military bases in California and Texas to house these minors.
Well, we know that data for April border crossings is set to be released this week. Camilo, do we have a sense? What are the numbers expected to show?
Yeah, so back in March, Elaine, we saw a record 19,000 unaccompanied children enter U.S. border custody. That was an all-time monthly high. Border officials are still getting hundreds of unaccompanied children a day. Many of them are minors who are sent to cross the border alone by desperate parents who fear that they will be expelled if they cross the border together as a family. That's at least what border officials today told us. However, we will see those numbers drop according to border officials, but we will still see a historic number of apprehensions, we believe, for any April in history in terms of unaccompanied minors. So the Biden administration has been able to speed up the processing of unaccompanied minors, but humanitarian and logistical challenges here at the U.S.-Mexico border still remain.
Well, we mentioned Secretary Mayorkas' visit to the border happening Friday, and you recently asked him about a process in which the U.S. uses planes to fly migrants back across the border to expel them, but that raises obvious health concerns during a pandemic. What did the Secretary have to say about that?
This is an incredibly important question, Elaine, because as we have discussed on multiple occasions, the Biden administration has continued to cite this public health authority, first invoked by the Trump administration, to turn back most adult migrants and some families with children to Mexico or to their home countries. The argument behind this policy, as you mentioned, Elaine, is that if migrants are allowed into facilities just like this one, coronavirus may spread, and DHS argues that it is trying to protect border officials from the virus. But we know that some families here in South Texas were being flown to places like El Paso and San Diego just to be expelled to Mexico from there because Mexican officials here in the state of Tamaulipas, right across South Texas, were not accepting Central American families with young children. But Border Patrol officers told us today that those flights have been canceled. So that is some new reporting that we have out today. According to the border officials whom we spoke to today, those flights have been canceled.
All right, Camilo Montoya-Galvez covering all angles at the southern border for us. Camilo, thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine.